Welcome back to Troubleshooting Agile. Hi there, Jeffrey.
Hi, Squirrel.
So I notice we have someone else with us. Who's that?
So we have our special guest, Gene Kim, and I'll say for our audience, either you know Gene Kim as author of many fantastic books such as Phoenix Project and many more. And if you don't, then go to IT Revolution and read up and come back educated. And we're really excited to have Gene here with us today. He's the author of a recent book called Vibe Coding, which with Steve Yegge. Welcome, Gene.
Oh my goodness, Jeffrey and Squirrel, so good to see you guys again, and thank you so much for having me on. It's a delight to be with you both.
And delightful to have you here.
Again.
So, Gene, I want to just jump right into it because I think the topic of vibe coding, agentic coding, AI in coding, what does AI mean for industry, is something that is all over. All the mailing lists I'm on are asking questions all the time. The CTO mailing lists are asking questions like, can you really use vibe coding in production code? What does this mean? How should we restructure ourselves? And the thing about this, people are asking a lot about the future of the industry, but the reality is the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And I'm very excited to have you here because I see you as someone who's already, to some extent, living in that future. Do you think that's fair? Do you think you sense and talk to a lot of people in the industry, where do you think your personal experience is relative to the rest of the industry? What kind of percentile are you at, would you say?
Yeah, what a great question. So maybe I wouldn't say from the future, but maybe kind of closer to the frontier. Yeah, so I mean, just in the way of background, you know, actually, if I could sort of like back up and like, how did I meet Steve Yegge and how did it pull me into this amazing adventure that led to the Vibe Coding book? Yeah, so as I described the last time I was here, I've spent, the way I would typically introduce myself is like, I've been studying high performing technology organizations for 26 years. That was a journey I started when I was the CTO and founder of a company called Tripwire, right? That led me into the DevOps movement. And I really thought that would be the most exciting adventure I would have in my career. I got to work on the state of DevOps research with Dr. Nicole Forsgren and Jez Humble. And yet, in last 1 year ago, June, I met a guy named Steve Yegge, who I've been an admirer of for 11 years.
Yegge's rants.
Yegge's rants, right? And one of them was about how he depicted the famous Jeff Bezos memo that described the most audacious memo that he'd ever written about how we can't have 3,500 developers coupled to one monolithic application, that we need independence of action. Thou shalt only communicate and coordinate through APIs, right? And anyone who doesn't do this will be fired, right? And that was, of course, a Google Plus.
Don't forget, have a nice day. But no, that's a joke. Jeff doesn't care.
Right. Jeff doesn't care, right? And what's funny is that the punchline, so that was amazing, right? So one of the best depictions, came from that famous memo that was actually meant to be published internally to other Googlers. And he was actually complaining about Google Plus, and Google Plus then, betrayed him because he accidentally posted it publicly, and thus landing him on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. I finally met him 1 year ago, June, and it turns out like it was amazing to meet him. He's just an amazing person, so talented. Kent Beckham called him one of the best communicators of our, not just our generation, but our field. And but one thing that we had in common was this kind of love of using AI for coding. And one of my aha moments was January 2024, when I put into ChatGPT, write a closure program to if given a bitmap of a YouTube screenshot, I want to find that red progress bar indicator. Right, so march up to the left side of the bitmap, find that red pixel with this RGB value, and then march to the right and compute percentage viewed. And to my amazement, it worked the first time. It was just I use my I love the Clojure programming language, which runs on the JVM, but I've never been a Java programmer, so I didn't understand any of the code. The AWT Java 2D bitmap libraries, and so like that would have been a multi-day ordeal for me just to even learn, like how do you do bitmaps in Java. And the last time I had done anything like that was probably 20 years ago in Microsoft C++. Anyway, so fast forward 6 months, right? I meet Steve Yegge, and he's we start comparing notes, and he says, coding is changing out from underneath us. And so what really changed my life was in August when he offered to pair program with me, and so out of that 47 minutes, we paired for 2 hours, right? And the problem that I chose to solve was I have 6,000 bitmaps. All of these screenshots of YouTube or podcast players, many of them from your podcast, right? And it turns out, over the last 12 years, I have 5 to 6,000 of these things, and I take them just
Wow.
because I heard something interesting, and I had some aspirations to go back someday, right, and write about it, hunt down a citation. But I've only done that maybe a handful of times, and so the goal was, hey, I have all these piles of screenshots. I'd love to be able to sort of take those screenshots, turn them into timestamps, download the YouTube videos, download the transcripts, and let's create like video excerpt highlights out of it. And I got one working in 47 minutes. And
Wow.
Jeffrey, I got to tell you, it's like that changed my life. Right? That would have been multiple days, right? I mean, it was used FFmpeg, right, which is always easy to start, very hard to finish. And I think that was the beginning of one of the most fun adventure I've ever been on, because these days I spend a lot of time again hanging out with the best in the game, right, trying to figure out but this time it's like all these people who are at the frontier who are doing things in coding that they're shaving at least an order of magnitude off of how we used to do things. In fact, just to in my rambling here, one of the people that we greatly admire is Dr. Eric Meyer, who is considered one of the greatest programming language designers of all time. He was part of Visual Basic, C Sharp, Link. He was part of Haskell. He wrote the Hack programming language at Meta, Facebook Meta, that they converted millions of lines of PHP into strongly typed Hack language. And he said, we are probably going to be the last generation of people who write code by hand. So let's have fun doing it. And anyway, so I feel like my area of passion these days is really studying these people who are just wildly embracing these tools, like Adrian Cockcroft, who led the cloud migration at Netflix, Kent Beck, who where to start, right? Extreme programming, Agile, and so forth. JUnit,
Yeah.
right? And all of them are doing amazing things, and I think that's what people at the frontier are doing. And some of them are just showing incredible productivity gains, doing things that are faster, more ambitious. They can do things alone. They're having more fun, and they're creating a lot of option value. So yeah, sorry for the long-winded answer, Jeffrey.
No, that's great. And in there, it was some of the elements that I particularly wanted to ask you about. One of the elements in our conversation, Gene, that we had several years ago, as I was asking you, getting some career advice, and you gave me this very interesting idea. You said, like, think of your ideal week of what you'd like to be like, and how you spend your time, the block of things. And one of the things you described in here was you were writing this. So you described this screenshot. What I have in mind is you'd be listening to a podcast on like your iPhone or something like that, and you take a screenshot, or YouTube, and you take a screenshot, and you have this whole collection. And so that's part of what your ideal week is ingesting information about the industry, right? And then also you went to go write tools, and you've always written tools, right? Throughout your publishing career, your running the company, you're writing utilities for yourself all the time, and that's something I've really admired. And that's part of your habits, right? Is to be creating software to help you do your work.
Yeah. In fact, and what's interesting, right, is that I would say pre-meeting Steve Yegge, a lot of it would be the same, right? It's like, yeah, you always want to find the best in the game, and you want to learn from them, right? I think there's a famous saying, like you are the non-functional attributes. Your attributes are like the top average of the top 5 people you hang out with, right?
Yes.
And so meeting Steve Yegge, that was part of that journey. But I think what it changed was that instead of being so frustrated with all the tools that I wanted to build but didn't have time, or just the juice didn't seem worth the squeeze, the big difference is like now I'm actually building those tools. And so, and yeah, I had mentioned to you before we started the interview. I think I published 3 open source repos 2 weeks ago, which is arguably more than I have in the last 15 years. Right?
Yeah.
Tripwire started off as an open source project. It kind of predates the term, but it was definitely publicly available. The source was available, but I haven't done anything really like that in decades.
And let me just interpret for some of our listeners who are not technical. What Gene is saying is that he hasn't written a major program that he released to the world for the last 15 years. And last week he did, what, 2, 3, you said?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say they're large, but like one of them was there's a problem in Clojure, and Python people have this as well, is that you have these dictionaries or maps, and if you look up a value that doesn't exist, it will just silently return nil. And I think there are a lot of philosophical reasons for doing that. But when you're vibe coding or doing agentic coding, it often hallucinates those keys, and so often you'll only discover these errors, way long after the fact, and you're trying to figure out why is a column in a table blank, or why is this not why is this behavior not what I expect? And so I just wrote this library that said instead of returning nil, throw an exception, right? Because one of the principles of feedback is that you want earliest feedback possible, as loud as possible, right, to get early detection of errors. And so you don't want that to go silently undetected. So I put that out there, even though it's kind of antithetical to the, Clojure philosophy. I did another one where it's like, so that if you're working on a Clojure backend application, you can get this kind of hot code reloading in the browser without having to write JavaScript. And so, not huge, but like it's something that didn't exist in the environment that I wanted. And so I put that out there. And I did another experiment that I was arguing with someone on a Slack channel about whether there's this problem in lists of closing the parentheses. And one thing that we know about LLMs is that they can't count, right? Like regular expressions can't count. And so I had just made a very strong argument to like, hey, look, let's give it a tool to help it close off parentheses. And instead of arguing about it, in 1 hour, I wrote a dialect of the Clojure grammar that instead of closing off parentheses and braces and brackets, it could just say pop, right? It would keep track of what was on the stack, and I even gave it a pop all, right? And the notion was that as an auto-regressive auto-completer, right, this should be the perfect tool for it. And I was amazed to find that the Clojure successful generation is like 97%, and my perfect grammar was batting at best 75%. But I spent a couple hours on it, and I don't know. It's just what I learned was that it's the bitter lesson is that there's all these problems that you think would be easier to solve to help the LLM, but as the LLMs get smarter and smarter, it will always outperform your kind of little bespoke tool. So that was actually a really amazing discovery. So I sort of put it out there as a maybe as anyone trying to fight the bitter lesson.
So, Gene, I think we might have lost some of our non-technical listeners with those details, but I want to ask you this. You've described quite deep technical tools that can help you. One of the things I'm very excited about is that I'm starting to see just a few people who are not coders, who aren't quite sure how to spell Clojure, who really have never worked with these things, but work with technical people all the time. And they are now able to write themselves little programs, little things that do something as simple as keep track of their calendar or remind them to do something or look up stock tips or something like that. Very small things that have been so frustrating to so many non-technical people for so long, because you and I, we can crank them out. If we really had to, Gene, if you had to write any of those three things, you could. It might take you 3 weeks instead of 3 hours, but you could. Now this is within reach of the non-technical people in our audience. I wonder if you're thinking about those, what you're seeing for people who aren't geeky coders, but who can get really significant benefit as if they were coders.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely, Squirrel. I mean, so Steve Yegge and I, we did a Vibe Coding for Leaders workshop at the Enterprise Technology Leadership Summit 2 months ago. And so we had 75 people there. It was 4 hours. And what was amazing to me was that we had 1 hour dedicated for coding. At the end of the hour, We gave them data to visualize. That was kind of the task, right? We gave them the Titanic survival data set. There's a huge CI/CD data set. This vulnerability data, the orange telco customer churn data, climate change data, and at the end of the hour, 75 out of 75 had built something. Where they had something running in a browser, visualizing the data. And there's this one. I'm actually looking at a picture here of a guy named Roger Sanffer. He's a director of engineering at HEB, so Texas's largest and most beloved grocer, and there's this big grin on his face. He's showing me this app that he wrote to basically check himself in at Southwest Airlines until the bot detection tools cut him off. But he said, I haven't coded in 15 years. I used to be a C# MVP, right? So someone recognized by Microsoft as someone at the top of their game, a phenomenal community participant and leader. And he said, for 15 years, the tech stack has moved beyond my experience. I've never used React and NPM on the back end, Node.js, and now I am, and it's brought me back, right? And it's just, I think what we're seeing is technology leaders who haven't coded in decades are roaring back, and product managers, UX people, designers, right? All these people who aren't, they're adjacent to development, but they are all doing similar things to analyze data.
And I'll expand your list, Gene. I'm curious if you see this as well. CEOs, CFOs, heads of sales, people who are in the executive suite and have exactly the problem you described. They have a bunch of data to visualize. And just like Excel democratized their access to raw compute, the ability to add some numbers together and make a balance sheet and all that kind of fun stuff, this is allowing them to create actual apps, either for communication to their developers to say, hey, build it like this, go make one that's actually robust and doesn't have bot detection limits and other things, or solve a daily problem for me. I got to check into Southwest Airlines every couple of days, solve this problem for me so I don't have it. I'm seeing that over and over again for people who are completely not coders, who are not interested in learning how to write code, but who are interested in getting tremendous benefits from it.
Yeah, 100%. And I've heard of heads of sales and heads of marketing, doing kind of building dashboards and doing data analysis. And I think it's basically anytime you have someone who is waiting for someone else and is frustrated, that vibe coding is allowing them to do it themselves. So that's the alone or autonomous in the FAFO framework. Faster, ambitious, alone and autonomous, fun and option value. And so I think it's a dev team that is waiting for another dev team or sets of dev teams because of the coupling. It could be designers. It could be software leaders who are waiting for the Tableau teams, right? They can do, suddenly they have this power to do things themselves. And I think, that creates incredible economic value.
So, Gene, we've now heard a bit about how this is impacting you and what it means for individuals that you worked with, like the head of the grocery chain in Texas that you were describing, who's suddenly cranking out code like you wouldn't believe. That's kind of an individual point of view. I'm wondering, because we're out of time for today, could you come back next week and talk to us about some of the implications for the industry? What's it mean for teams? What's it mean for heads of technology? What's it mean even for those CFOs and how many salaries they're going to have to pay? Is that something you could come back and talk to us about next week?
Absolutely. Would love to.
Fantastic. All right. So we're going to have more with Gene. We're kind of ending on a cliffhanger here because we've heard how AI is impacting people individually. What's it mean for our organization? What's it mean for our teams? What's it mean for agile software development? Some people in our audience are likely to be skeptics, and they're going to disagree, and they're going to say, Gene, you're all wet. You're taking away our jobs. This isn't working. We love hearing from people like that. So if you disagree with us, we would sure like to hear from you, and we'll do our best to respond and maybe get Gene back to comment on what you have to say. So we really want to invite disagreement, debate, argument. If you have a different approach, we'd like to hear from you. There's a really good way to get in touch with us, and that's to go to agileconversations.com, where you will will find our book with IT Revolution, Agile Conversations, of course. You'll find lots of material related to better conversations, better leadership for your team, all of it free. And you'll also find our Twitter and email, and I think we're probably on Sora these days, and who knows what somebody's invented last week. So you'll find us in many places, and we respond to all of them. So please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll see you next week when we'll have another edition with Gene of Troubleshooting Agile.